Hi everyone! For my land talk, I interviewed my mom about the shoreline restoration that occurred outside of my childhood home in Milford, Connecticut, in the United States. My first question is, what did this area originally look like when we first moved in?
My first impression when we walked in just to take a look at the apartment, this is a condo complex of building with 3 stories, and our apartment is on the first floor. When we opened the door to when we were buying the place, we my first impression was, wow, um, I can see the river. It's right on the river, and there is a piece of land with grass. We didn't have a backyard because the primary attraction here was to live on the water, and we still had this a patio, a little bit of grassy land, and then the river. It was just the picture still in my mind. Um, that was 2004, so 16 years ago when we moved in. And I think the piece of land that was right in front of us outside the patio was about 4 to 5 feet wide of flat, grassy surface. Um, I think that's.
How were you able to use this area in the past?
Um, well, this 4 to 5 feet is kind of like a collar that goes around the building, and kids were running outside. You could walk out the patio, take that path around the building, and go to a bigger area. Um, and we used to just lay out there in the grass, just throw the blanket and suntan. Not really much else going on there, I don't think. A primary attraction was to be this close to the water, but at the same time, we had this feeling of being on the grass and enjoying, and I'm using air quotes, this little piece of a backyard, which was, you know, as wide as only probably 4 to 5 feet.
And what kind of changes did you see in this area over time?
Yeah, so it wasn't, it was such a small piece of land and we didn't really notice how important it was until we started to lose it. So one of the first changes that we noticed were the sinkholes. We have along the bank line, the river bank, we have riprap, huge boulders, and the grassy area started to sink. There are actual sinkholes forming. Um, the management companies started to fill them up with gravel in certain areas. So, over several years, I guess, we would lose more and more of the grassy area, and that would be replaced with the gravel, um, just to fill in the sinkholes. Um, the grass started sinking. The flat area that we used to be able to walk out on, you could put a chair or even a folding table. Because the soil started to erode, and we started to lose the soil due to the river activity and all the activity on the river, so boat traffic. We also live very near the delta of the Housatonic River, that we experience very strong tidal activity. So twice a day the tide comes in and it leaves, and in addition to the river flow, we do get the back and forth of the tide. Um, and the soil started seeping through and leaving through the riprap. So eventually, the slope right off the patio was so steep that you couldn't stand on it. And I remember we had family over, and people couldn't even step outside. Um, we lost the grassy area and the riprap, the huge rocks that were sort of topping off and were about 5 or 4 feet away from the edge of the building, are actually, fell into the areas where the soil eroded from and filled those holes. So we had rocks kind of falling onto the building, and actually the building started losing that support from the soil and from the riverside. And the concern for the condominium association was that we would eventually the building may lose stability and fall into the river. I think there are about 40 or 50 units in this building, and one of our neighbors, also on the first floor, at one point said that they saw a crack in the wall. So at that point, their patio completely didn't have grass in front of them, and we had basically an unwalkable slope with the rocks kind of coming close. What else? I mean, it was kind of unexpected, I think, because it was over the period of about 14 years that this occurred. I mean, we did have three major hurricanes come through. We had Hurricane Irene in 2011, Hurricane Sandy in 2012, really just, the next year just plummeted, and the water didn't get into our condo, but it was an inch away from entering the patio. So there was a lot of water activity, and after that, we lost a lot of soil and a lot of gravel. And then in 2017, Hurricane Irma came, and that became apparent to the community that we needed to do something to restore it, which was the point when I got involved as a volunteer on the board to help with shoreline restoration project. One of the things that we were thinking about is how to restore the shoreline, and what did that entail. So as a board, and with the help with the management company, we hired an environmental engineering firm that helped assess exactly the type of restoration work that needed to be done. And what we ran into was that this riverbank right in front of our property here has tidal marshland, which is protected land by the state of Connecticut. And in order to do the repairs to the shoreline, we had to get permits from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Agency of Connecticut. That was a big deal. Typically, it's very hard to get any sort of building permitting from if there's any protected area, environmental protected areas. So what we were able to do is negotiate with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection that we will rebuild the marsh area and basically relocate it to a different area that just down the river, still part of our condominium, the land that belongs to the condominium association, but not in front of the building. And this way we were able to, because the reconstruction of the shoreline was going to involve not just sort of propping up and building up the protection so that the building doesn't keel over, but we were able to negotiate 4 to 6 feet of horizontal surface from the building. One of the concerns for us and sort of the benefits of that we were looking to gain from this restoration project was that we would have access from the back of the building to the units. So in case of emergency or fire, there would be access that you could prop up a ladder or someone can escape from that side of the building, which was not accessible before because people would just have to, literally jump into the river if something like that happened. So that was one of our considerations when we were thinking of doing that. And we got very lucky and were very happy when we got the permits. The reconstruction project took about, I guess it went from 2018 into 2019. And then in early, just when the frost sort of, I guess at the end of winter, because we had a very mild winter this winter, just recently we planted the marsh. So the land here, we were able to rebuild it, different construction and sort of trying to prevent the erosion going forward, and hopefully buying this association another probably 40 years before it, hopefully, or maybe more, before we have to do something else if it comes to that. And let's see.
How would you describe this area in the present day?
We don't have the grass anymore. One of the things that the construction entailed was in order to build all this, we were going to lose the grass. So the area now, we have 4 to 5 feet, a nice collar around the building, between the building and the river. It's walkable. It's horizontal. It's not as pretty as having a little sliver of grass. But what's interesting, there are some plants that had lived there before. So I've had pansies there and some water lilies. And through the whole reconstruction with the bulldozers and bringing in the dirt and all that work, they put in whole new riprap and this material that's supposed to support the soil and prevent erosion. And this spring, a few weeks ago, I noticed that the pansies are blooming and the little sprouts of the water lilies are coming up between the fabric that's supposed to go all the way down to the riverbank and into the riverbank under the riprap, and between the building and that piece of material. So I was really happy to see that because the construction that happened here, the building was shaking and it was kind of scary. The kind of, it was like the Transformers were in town.
How would you say this has affected your use of this area today?
Well, I think a lot of nice things have happened. So this area is now walkable. So we see a lot more neighbors. People take longer walks, and it's really nice. This whole area of about probably 300 feet of riverside was not accessible.